My name is Mary Ann Dyer. I'm Program Director of Adult Redeploy Illinois at the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. I'm here today to provide technical assistance for the recently released Notice of Funding Opportunity for Adult Redeploy Illinois Implementation Grants. As we go through this session, there may be a number of acronyms that are used. Here is a list of several that you may see. AF stands for Amplifund, which is the state's grant management system, and this is the platform on which all applications will be submitted. ARI stands for Adult Redeploy Illinois. CRA stands for the Crime Reduction Act, which is legislation in 2009 that created Adult Redeploy Illinois. GATA stands for Grants Accountability and Transparency Act, which is legislation in 2014 that established processes and standards for the distribution of grant funds in the state. GMS stands for Grant Management System, also known as Amplifund. CJA is the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority, where ARI is housed, and this is a state agency created to improve the administration of justice through grants and research. IDOC is the Illinois Department of Corrections, the state's prison system, and NOFO stands for Notice of Funding Opportunity. Today we will talk a little bit about Adult Redeploy Illinois and our goals. We'll go over the NOFO and its scope, and get into Amplifund a little bit to navigate through the application forms. We'll also talk about the requirements, the program review process for the applications, and additional resources that are available. So Adult Redeploy Illinois, as I mentioned, was created by the Crime Reduction Act of 2009 with the goal to increase local alternatives to incarceration. ARI is a state grant program administered by the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority and modeled after a successful Juvenile Redeploy Illinois program at the Illinois Department of Human Services. In pursuit of our work, we use performance incentive funding and justice reinvestment principles. We strive to be as flexible a funding source as possible, focused on local control and design. We're mission-driven and data-driven. Our mission is to safely reduce prison use by building local systems that divert individuals from a prison sentence into more cost-effective programs that promote their reintegration into the community. ARI provides funding and technical assistance to Illinois communities to establish a continuum of sanctions and treatment alternatives that effectively address social determinants of crime and incarceration and that promote equity within the justice system. Our goals are to invest in results-oriented local programs that rehabilitate individuals and prevent relapse and future criminal behavior. We want to foster a strong, equitable community correction system and support community-led justice efforts. We also generate and collect evidence in support of decarceration. Our current network is comprised of 28 sites around the state that cover 45 counties. We work in urban, suburban, and rural areas, and we fund over 60 prison diversion programs. This is the Notice of Funding Opportunity that we are talking about today, and it can be accessed on the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority website as well as the ARI website. The goal of this Notice of Funding Opportunity is to provide implementation grants and expand our network. We plan to support the implementation of local prison diversion programs, and we have the overall goal to reduce the number of people committed to prison on probation-eligible charges. Eligibility for these funds are county, units of government, or judicial circuits. A county may submit on their own or on behalf of a group of counties or judicial circuit. Other units of local government or private agencies or not-for-profit organizations cannot apply on their own, but they can provide services as subawardees or subcontractors of a county unit of government. The funds available through this funding opportunity are $11 million, as intended for implementation grants for current sites and new sites. The grants will range from $50,000 to $1 million maximum. The estimated number of grants to be awarded is 25 to 35, and the award period runs the state fiscal year from July 1st, 2026 to June 30th, 2027, a 12-month period. The implementation of an Adult Redeploy Illinois program is accomplished through a local plan, and that local plan is actually a completed application through this process. It's comprised of a program narrative as well as a logic model and letters of support. Successful applicants to this Notice of Funding opportunity will explain how addressing the risk, needs, and strengths of a defined target population through effective target interventions will lead to greater public safety and reduced reliance on prison. Examples of some of the programs to be implemented with ARI funds include problem-solving courts like drug courts, mental health courts, and veterans courts, as well as intensive supervision probation programs with services, specialized probation caseloads for specific target populations, and other system enhancements. Regardless of the program design, the goal is to implement a local plan to establish and expand a prison diversion program at the local level with the following requirements. There needs to be a commitment to equity, in that all who can benefit from prison diversion programming and services should have access regardless of race, age, sex, or geographic location. The programs and services should be based on an assessment of risk, needs, and strengths of the individual and incorporate evidence-based practices that have been shown to reduce recidivism. All applicants must commit to participating in a performance measurement process and any evaluation that comes from that. They must also establish a reduction goal in the number of prison commitments and agree to a reimbursement provision if that reduction goal is not met. If a problem-solving court is the program design proposed, that must be certified or in the process of being certified by the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts according to their statewide problem-solving court standards. So let's talk a little bit about the local plan, which is the basis of the application. Per the Crime Reduction Act, each county or circuit participating in the Adult Redeploy Illinois program shall create a local plan describing how it will protect public safety and reduce the county or circuit's utilization of incarceration in state facilities or local county jails by the creation or expansion of individualized services or programs. A local plan is like a mini strategic plan and includes the following elements, which are also the elements of the application: summary of the program, description of the service area, statement of the problem, both looking at the current situation and that unmet need, the key partners that are going to be around the table in the planning and implementation of this project, goals, objectives, and performance metrics for the project, calculations of cost effectiveness compared to prison, acknowledgement of certification if it's a problem-solving court, and budget with a detailed budget narrative. As I mentioned, the local plan is focused on a target population and target interventions. Let's talk a little bit about each of these. The target population for any ARI-funded program is comprised of individuals who have probation-eligible offenses. They cannot have offenses that require that they go to prison. They have to be eligible for diversion. They should be prison-bound, whereas diverting them into a community-based alternative will actually result in a reduction in the prison population and prison expenses. And by prison-bound, we use the proxy of a felony offense and an assessment as moderate to high risk to reoffend. When establishing a target population for an Adult Redeploy Illinois funded program, one can use the entire eligible population, which we will talk about next, or you can define a subset of that total eligible population that matches more closely with the target interventions you're proposing. We acknowledge that jurisdictions best understand their own local needs, and they're best situated to identify their target population and design their local ARI program. But the selected target population should result in the greatest possible number of individuals diverted from state prisons while preserving public safety. In order to look at the overall eligible population for any ARI-funded program, ARI and CJA provide eligibility tables based on Department of Corrections admissions data. These tables are available at the ARI website under the Grants tab, and its county-level data will be used in completing the program narrative/local plan. The eligibility tables include numbers of people who have been committed to prison over the prior 3 years on probation-eligible offenses. The idea is to identify for each jurisdiction who has been going, the individuals who have been going to the Department of Corrections in the recent past, who could have been diverted to community-based supervision and services had ARI funds been available. The data that we offer are available by county, offense class, and offense type, and include a variety of demographics. Let's have a look at some of these eligibility tables. They are downloadable, as I say, as Excel spreadsheets from the ARI website. The first tab is Selected Court Admissions, and this gives the overall picture of individuals going to the Department of Corrections from each individual county. We include both the eligible cases for diversion or those with probation-eligible charges upon admission, as well as those who are not eligible. For ARI purposes, we are only interested in the eligible number. Another one of the eligibility tables looks more closely at what the offense class and type of the individuals who were committed to the Department of Corrections on probation-eligible charges looked like. And this will give you an idea of whether there's a particular type of offense that people seem to be going into DOC on that may suggest adding a target intervention to the jurisdiction's continuum of services and sanctions with ARI funding. Further, we provide demographics on the individuals being sent to prison by age, race, ethnicity, and sex. This provides an opportunity to perhaps zero in on a target population such as emerging adults that would require a specific target intervention that could be funded with ARI. So the target population is used to calculate a reduction goal, which is the primary performance measure for any ARI program. As we've said, the overall goal of ARI is to reduce the number of people going to prison, and that is done by establishing a target population and then calculating a goal of a 25% reduction in prison commitments from that target population with ARI funding. Here's an example of how that might be done. Using the tables we just looked at, you could take the entire program eligible population as your target population based on the 3-year average. If that number were 80, then your 25% reduction goal would be 20. In other words, you would agree with ARI funding to reduce the number of people going into DOC from the target population by 20 individuals by instead bringing them in the front door of your ARI-funded program in the community. Now, I mentioned you can also come up with subsets from the total eligible population if you wanted to fine-tune your target population according to the target interventions you are going to invest in. So perhaps you would focus just on the low-level Class 3 and 4 felonies, according to what the stakeholders in your jurisdiction want to focus on. That might reduce the target population number from the 80 overall that were eligible to 60. Then your reduction goal from that would be 15. If you wanted to further look solely at the individuals that may have diagnosable substance use disorders, for example, for a drug court intervention, and you can estimate that's about 2/3 of those in the Class 3 and 4 offense types, then that number would be 40, and your reduction goal would be 10. At the end of the day, you can define your target population and the reduction goal, but it must be a cost-effective alternative to incarceration. Now, the defined target intervention with ARI funding can be any type of program, model, intervention, or combination thereof, as long as they're aligned with the goals of ARI and based in or informed by evidence to reduce recidivism. As we talked earlier, examples of this are problem-solving courts, which must be AOIC certified or in the process of being certified, specialized probation caseload program that incorporates services, or other system enhancements. Innovation and experimentation are encouraged with ARI funding. Regardless of program type, the interventions must follow principles of effective intervention. It must be based on assessments. They must focus on enhancing motivation of the client with utilization of motivational interviewing techniques. They must target interventions according to risk, need, and responsivity principles. They must involve skill training with directed practice, such as through cognitive behavioral therapy. They should focus on positive reinforcement, because we know that the most effective interventions have 4 positives to any 1 negative to create behavior change. They should engage ongoing community support, because reintegration to the community is one of the main goals of ARI. And there must be a commitment to measuring relevant processes and practices, and then provide that measurement feedback. As mentioned, the reduction goal is the primary performance measure. So if awarded, sites must agree to reduce by 25% the number of people sent to DOC from their defined target population. There is a possibility, if that number is not met, that a reimbursement penalty could be imposed by the Adult Redeploy Illinois Oversight Board per the Crime Reduction Act. The progress towards a reduction goal is measured by the number of diversions or enrollments in lieu of incarceration. If the ARI grantee is at risk of not meeting its reduction goal, we can enter into a corrective action plan. Ultimately, it's at the discretion of the Adult Redeploy Illinois Oversight Board whether or not to assess a penalty and at what level, currently estimated to be half the cost of marginal cost of imprisonment. As noted, performance measurement and evaluation is key, and each ARI grantee must submit quarterly reports that reflect how they are progressing towards each objective, and also upload a series of client-level data elements through electronic data file upload. They must also agree to participate in required external evaluations that are conducted to determine the effectiveness of the program with state taxpayer dollars. So that is what we're trying to accomplish with this Notice of Funding opportunity, and here's the timeline. This Notice of Funding opportunity was posted March 12, 2006, and the application due date is more than 30 days from that on April 14, 2026 at 5 o'clock. In between that time, we'll be posting this technical assistance session and collecting questions and answers and posting these on the website so that people going through the application process can have questions answered and everybody can benefit from the information provided. The last question needs to be submitted by April 9th, and these will be posted every Friday for the week before. The ARI Oversight Board will be reviewing the applications and approving the awards in May of 2026, and the program period is July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. So now let's look at the grant management system and see what the application looks like. But before we can even get into AppleFund, there are pre-qualification processes listed here. Resources that offer step-by-step instructions about pre-qualification are available on the CEJA website. To apply in AppleFund, an organization will register first with the Illinois Grant Accountability Transparency Act Grantee Portal, and then each applicant organization must identify an individual or individuals who will be submitting the application who will serve as the primary contact. This is what the Amplifund registration page looks like from the GATA Grantee portal. This includes the Amplifund sign-in, creating an account, and also some frequently asked questions. Now, one thing we'll talk a lot about here is that once you're in Amplifund, it times out after 20 minutes of inactivity. So in order to save your work, you should be continuously pressing the Save and Continue button until you're ready to submit. Here's the application for the ARI implementation grants that you access through Amplifund from this public link. You will click on the Apply button on the far right at the top of the form, and that will bring you into the application itself, which includes opportunity details, ARI program information, and a series of application forms which we'll go through. Before going into the application forms, you'll want to include the amount requested and provide some specific information, the application name. And then we will get into the meat of the application. There are 14 application forms in Amplifund that must be gone through and completed. This starts with the uniform application, includes the program information, and then a series of forms that relate to the parts of the local plan. After each of these forms, and on the face of each of these forms are the points that will be awarded for completion, which total 100 points. So the first form is the uniform grant application. Applicants are required to fill in every section, check the applicant acknowledgement, and then upload the document to Amplifund. In addition to that, each applicant will have to include the current annual budget of the agency, circled there. After the uniform grant application comes the program narrative. As you're going through these, please refer to program requirements and prompts for each questions when completing your response, and refer to the evaluation scoring as a guide when completing your response to see how each question will be weighted. Overall, the program narrative should convey the need for the program, with a discussion of the current systems and unaddressed gaps, as well as an understanding and implementation of required program components. As you're completing the application, please note that ARI expects and requires person-centered language to be used, referring to the people to be served as clients or participants, and avoiding any stigmatizing labels such as offenders and felons. Person-centered language avoids stigmatization so that we can support rehabilitation and reintegration goals. So the next application form is the summary of the program, worth 5 points. You'll fill out the narrative section, preferably limiting the summary to a 5,000 character limit. to provide a brief standalone overview of the plan to use ARI funding to reduce the number of people with probation-eligible offenses to the Department of Corrections. At a minimum, this summary should include a description of the target population with your calculation of the 25% reduction goal, description of the program model and the evidence-based target intervention or interventions that will provide supervision and services for the population. List briefly the key partners and community stakeholders in the program and provide the proposed total budget for the program and the estimated cost per person served to show cost effectiveness. The next application form is the description of the service area. And this is where you will identify in the narrative section the county or the judicial circuit that comprises the applicant jurisdiction. Here you'll provide demographic information, economic information, and criminal justice system information that describe the area to be served and the conditions that give rise to the need for ARI-funded interventions. You're encouraged to use quantitative data, numbers, such as those that you get through the Census Bureau, as well as qualitative data that describes in more narrative form the challenges faced by the jurisdiction. The next application form is Statement of Problem with a focus on the current situation. This is worth 10 points total. You will fill out a chart, which we'll look at next, to upload to Amplifund using data from the eligibility tables we went over earlier that are available on the ARI website at the Grants tab. There's also a narrative section that needs to be completed where you'll briefly describe the existing continuum of diversion programs that exist and the estimated capacity of those, as well as the health and human services infrastructure that's available to work with the justice-involved population. Here is where you will upload the DOC commitment data table, and this is what that commitments table looks like that you will complete in Excel from using the data that are available on the ARI website. Download this, complete it, and then upload it to Amplifund. The next section is the Statement of Problem looking at unmet needs. This is worth 5 points. You'll fill out the narrative section and describe the investments that are needed to fully establish a continuum of community-based sanctions and services. And here you'll describe the gaps in the current system, both in the justice system as well as the health and human services system, that must be addressed in order to be able to safely supervise and serve people in the community in lieu of incarceration. Again, here's that reminder. Since the system times out after 20 minutes of inactivity, make sure you're saving your work. The next application form is the Key Partners form, which is worth 10 points overall. First, you will fill out a chart, which we'll look at next, that's worth 5 points that lists the key partners, title only, no specific names, and then briefly describes the role of each partner in ensuring the success of the program. This will be downloaded, completed, and uploaded in Amplifund. The second part of the Key Partners section is uploading letters of support, which are worth 5 points. We require that every local plan include letters from the key stakeholders, chief judge or presiding criminal court judge, state's attorney, public defender, and the director of probation and/or court services. It's very important to make sure that all these individuals and departments are on board with the program in order to set it up for success. You'll upload these letters as one file in PDF form in Amplifund. Here is the key partners table that you will download, complete in Word, and upload to Amplifund. The next application form is really the bulk of the application. It describes the project implementation of the proposed ARI program model. It is in 2 forms, and it's worth 30 points overall. Fill out the narrative sections that are in the application forms, describing the target population and enrollment criteria, intake and assessment process, Plan to supervise and rehabilitate individuals safely in the community. Plan to integrate and leverage the existing services and programs in the criminal justice system and health and human services system. Describe the impact on the court system that this increased diversion may create, and then describe your plan to incorporate community involvement. The point totals for each of these individual sections are listed here. And then in the second form, you'll describe your efforts to ensure equitable access to diversion. In addition, you'll be asked to include a logic model. Now, a template is provided, or you can use your own, which will show the inputs into the program, the outputs, like the different activities and participation levels you expect to see in the program, as well as a description of the short, medium, and long-term outcomes expected. The CEJA website has a full webinar and series of tools describing how to create a logic model. And this is what the form that is provided, the template that's provided, looks like. The next application form is an implementation planner schedule, and this will be filled out with the template provided and then uploaded to Amplifund. You'll be asked to define each step in the implementation and operation of the proposed program and include the staff position responsible and a target date for completion for each step. Please include sufficient detail because this will help you with internal monitoring for the program, as well as help us from an external point of view monitor progress and make sure you're on track towards your goals. This is what the implementation schedule template that will be provided. You'll download it, complete it in Word, and upload it to Amplifund. Reminder to save often. And then the next application form is a goals and performance metrics chart. This section is worth 10 points. The chart itself, which we'll have a quick look at, is worth 5 points. And you'll also fill out a narrative section that describes organizational capacity and infrastructure to actually meet the goals that you've established. Here is what's provided for the goals and metrics. It goes on for a couple of pages. This is just a snapshot of the beginning part of the chart. You will download this, complete it in Word, and then upload it back to Amplifund. The last part of the application form is the budget and budget narrative. This is worth 15 points total. You must use and complete the Excel spreadsheet that CEJA provides. This is our standard budget and budget narrative form, and you'll complete it by downloading it in Excel and then uploading it once complete. The program is for 12 months, and both the budget and budget narrative should reflect 12 months of programming. In addition to completing the budget numbers, worth 5 points, and detailed narrative, another 5 points, you will also calculate the cost per person served to demonstrate cost effectiveness and the potential for state savings by investing in local alternatives to incarceration. Here is the budget form quickly, and then here is that calculation of cost effectiveness. You will take the total budget amount and divide it by the service goal that you identified in your goals and objectives section. And you will come up with the cost per person served. We expect that this number will demonstrate substantial savings from prison, where that cost per person served is nearly $53,000. Now, the types of expenses that you can include in your budget must be reasonable, necessary, and obviously part of the actual operation of the funded program. It can include everything from personnel, plus training and travel for program staff, as well as program supplies such as drug testing supplies, and then a whole host of services for the participants in the program, like treatment services for behavioral health, mental health, substance use disorders, as well as wraparound services with transportation, housing, etc. ARI funding can be used for incentives to encourage positive reinforcement, and you can also use funds for data collection and analysis, helping to meet the requirements of the performance measurement requirements of the grant. Vehicles can be purchased only by government agencies. Regardless of the funds or the types of ways that you want to spend the funds, you need to be careful that with any grant resources you are asking for, that they are supplementing what's already available at the local level and not supplanting. Here's a statement on what supplanting is, and you will need to certify that you will not be supplanting any local resources. This is the page that you want to see at the end, where you have received verification of your submission. So the application due date is 5 p.m. on April 14th, 2026. All application materials must be submitted via Amplifund. Proposals will not be accepted by mail, fax, or in person. Incomplete applications will not be reviewed, nor will late submissions. Here is what a complete application looks like as we've gone through this. You can use this checklist to make sure that everything is included, that you've done all the work that you need to in order to submit the application. The review process once these applications come in includes a screening by ARI and CJA staff, and then the applications that are eligible are moved to an expert panel for merit-based review and scoring. The maximum number of points is 100, and in order to be funded, minimally the applications must score 70 points. Thereafter, it goes to one of the working committees of the ARI Oversight Board called Site Selection and Monitoring Committee, which will review the scores and other information and prepare funding recommendations that will be reviewed and approved by the Oversight Board at their May 2026 meeting. This is a review of each of the individual application forms and how they're scored, totaling 100 points. There are additional resources that are available that we wanted to bring to your attention as you're completing your application. You can go to the ARI website, and as I said, at the Grants tab, you'll find application information as well as those eligibility tables for calculating your reduction goal. There are also an apps tab that has additional data sets and information on substance use and mental health disorders. And there's other information about the current ARI network on the resources tab. On the CJA website, you'll find a lot of information that provides context of the criminal justice system in Illinois, but also a specific page that's just related to GATA. And that provides a variety of foundational webinars and access to technical assistance recordings. Any questions regarding this notice of funding opportunity must be submitted to the email address provided, cja.adultredeploynofo@illinois.gov. And all questions and answers will be publicly posted every Friday for applicants to access at the GATA page on the CJA website. Contact information for this NOFO is Program Manager Stacy Woods, who leads the ARI Grants program. She can be reached through that email address, cja.adultredeploynofo@illinois.gov. So again, let's look at what we need to do in order to be successful in applying for an ARI implementation grant. Please submit all these required materials in Amplifund by 5 p.m. on April 14th, 2026. And as we went over in detail, that includes the uniform grant application, a series of completed forms and uploads comprising the program narrative, which equals the local plan, along with letters of support, your logic model, implementation schedule, goals and performance metrics chart, and of course, very importantly, a full budget and budget narrative completed in Excel and then uploaded into Amplifund. Thank you so much for your interest in Adult Redeploy Illinois, and we look forward to reviewing your application.